This is a short video that deals with the uses of elasticity of demand in business and in economics. Uh, it's a short video. It'll just briefly look at some applications, and this video will be extended upon in other videos in the series, some of which are much more complex and much more detailed. This one is just to introduce some applications, some brief applications of the concept and show its importance in different areas. So it's important for a start for both the government and for commercial organizations. It's important for the government and it's important for companies to at least understand the importance of the concept of elasticity, but ideally to have some indication of the value of the elasticity figure if it was calculated. The government needs to know the price elasticity of demand before it imposes an indirect tax on a good, for example. So it needs to know, will it raise money for the exchequer? Will it raise money for the government if it imposes a tax on a good? This, of course, depends on the elasticity of demand for that product. If the product's in inelastic demand, in other words, the consumer is going to continue to purchase it at a higher price, then the government may impose the tax and the consumers will just simply pay at a higher price. But if it's an elastic demand, or if it's on that part of the demand curve which is elastic, then an increase in the price, an increase in the tax imposed by the government, which will increase the price of the good, may lead to a significant fall in demand, which may actually damage the government in the sense that it raises less from the good than even before it imposed the increase in tax. So the government must understand the importance of elasticity of demand when imposing taxes. In order to raise revenue, the government may impose, say, an excise duty on some goods, but it must understand the consequences of doing that, and to do that it must have some appreciation of the likely elasticity of demand for those goods. If the demand is price elastic, then the consumer will switch from buying this good and the government will not raise the required tax revenue. So if it's an elastic demand, the consumers may simply stop buying the good, in which case the government has imposed a tax, but now the government actually gets less than perhaps it did before. It gets less because the consumers have switched away. The price is now too high and the consumers have moved to other products or switched their demand elsewhere. So the government needs to select items that are in inelastic demand, that the customers will continue to buy despite the increase in taxation. Therefore, the government targets only those items which are price inelastic in demand, such as items like petrol and tobacco and alcohol. So if the government increases the price of petrol by 2p a litre, people still buy the petrol. They don't like paying the extra, but they'll still buy it. And the government will raise revenue in that way. But if the government imposes a tax of 2p on some trivial item, the consumers may think, nah, it's now too expensive and they won't purchase it. They simply shift away. So consumers may be sensitive to price increases, or they may not be. Depends on the elasticity of demand. Another consideration for the government is the sensitivity of imports and exports to changes in the exchange rate. When the exchange rate changes, and this introduces two topics to us now. One is exchange rates and the importance of exchange rates, subject of separate videos, and also elasticity of demand, which will be looked at in more detail in other videos as well. But we have two concepts here, elasticity of demand and exchange rates. Now when the exchange rates change, the price of imports and exports also change. Now, it's important that the government understands the, if you like, the connection between elasticity of demand and the exchange rates. A change in the exchange rate will change the price of imports and exports, and the government will be interested in how this changes in price will influence the value of imports and exports. So, for example, let's say the exchange rate changes and as a consequence the price of oil increases. Now that means the country has to pay more for its oil, because we buy oil because it's an important item for us. If oil was in an elastic demand, then the increase in price would mean we'd switch into buying something else. We would stop buying it. But oil is so important that if the price goes up, we still purchase it. So the government needs to know what's the effects of a change in the exchange rate on the demand for imports. And that, of course, is really considering elasticity of demand. As I said, these topics will be dealt with in great detail in other videos. This is just introducing the concept, and if you want to find out more, do some research into this area and you'll find out exactly how this one works. It'll be dealt with in a separate class, as I said. This particular point is known as the Marshall-Lerner condition, and it's dealing with something called the Marshall-Lerner condition, which is important in terms of macroeconomics and looking at the macroeconomy. Now, as far as private organizations are concerned, these private companies, knowledge of the price, the cross price and income elasticities of demand is crucial for success. The business community have to know about price elasticity of demand. They may not call it the price elasticity of demand, but in effect that's what they're talking about. And we've identified three different types here. Sometimes it's called the own price, or just the price. That means if the price of the product increases, the company increases its price in the market, what will happen to sales? Will sales be badly affected? Will they fall significantly because of the increase in the price? Or will they stay the same? Clearly, that relates to elasticity of demand. How sensitive is the demand to changes in the price? We also identify something called cross-price elasticity of demand. Sometimes an increase in the price of one product will affect the demand for a different product. If the price of petrol rises significantly, then the demand for diesel cars may increase. So the price of petrol has increased, causing a demand for diesel cars to increase. Because people switch away from petrol, to diesel. This happens a lot in our lives. We're constantly looking for substitutes if we can. So we need to know about the cross-price elasticity of demand, and industrialists who are setting prices for their products, they need to bear in mind, if they are increasing their price, will consumers switch their demand away from that product and towards something else? So what's the cross-price elasticity of demand for its product against some other product? And also we have got income elasticities. If incomes in the area are falling because, let's say, there is a recession, companies are closing down or companies are cutting back, people have less income to spend as a consequence, how will that affect the demand for a company's product? If their customers have less to spend, how will that affect their demand for the product? Well, clearly it depends on the importance of the product. For staple items of food, for example, the demand may remain the same. But for luxury items, it may be affected, and affected badly. But as incomes fall, people switch away from the luxuries and go to maintaining and releasing income to maintain the staple items: food, shelter, warmth, clothing, and so on. So companies must be aware of the elasticities in terms of the price of the product, the cost price, and the income elasticities. And as I said, business leaders know all about this. They are completely at ease with these calculations. They do them almost mentally. They don't need to sit down with pen and paper. They know how sensitive their products are to changes in the price of the product, to changes in the price of other goods, to changes in incomes. And they are familiar with these. They may engage in sophisticated calculations sometimes, but generally speaking, good business leaders will be familiar with these concepts. As I said, they may not call it the elasticity of demand, but that's what it is. It's the income elasticity of demand, cross price elasticity of demand, and the own price elasticity of demand. So businesses contemplating an increase in the price of the good will have to take into account the likely market responses to that increase. Clearly, they must work out there's going to be some market response to any change they make. And the significance of that market response is a measure of its elasticity. Elasticity is looking at the responses of the market to changes in the price or income or the price of other goods. In order to be able to do that, the business person should have some idea about the relevant elasticity figure. And as I said, generally speaking, they do. A lot of business leaders are very sophisticated people who understand precisely how the market works. They may not be able to do anything about the situations in the market, but they understand quite a lot about how the market works. And they will know that if they increase their price, the demand may fall. It may not. It depends on the product. The product could be a staple item of food, for example. So if it is, and they increase the price, the people will still buy it. The people have no choice. So it's an inelastic demand. But if it's a luxury item and they increase the price, people may cease to buy it. So they need to be aware of this. So as I said at the outset, this is a short video just looking at some uses for elasticity, and I've looked at it in the context of the government imposing a tax and also the exchange rate issue, which will be looked at in separate videos, and also in terms of the private organisation. So the importance of elasticity cannot really be overstated. It is a very important concept in business. But that's all we need to deal with in this session, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.